Today we will discuss about the urinary bladder and the urethra of ox, and we will compare this with the other species. First, urinary bladder. So what is urinary bladder? A urinary bladder है क्या? It is a hollow musculomembranous sac that varies in size, form and position depending upon the amount of urine it contains. So a musculomembranous sac होता है, इसकी जो फॉर्म होता है, साइज एंड पोजीशन वो वेरी करती है, एंड इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द अमाउंट ऑफ यूरिन इट कंटेन्स. सो व्हेन इट इज कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड तो उस टाइम ये स्मॉल होता है, इट इज ग्लोब्यूलर एंड इट लाइज कहाँ पे होता है? ऑन द फ्लोर ऑफ द पेल्विक कैविटी. बट व्हेन इट गेट्स फिल्ड विद द यूरिन तो ये क्या होता है? इट ग्रेजुअली extends into the floor of the abdomen and it becomes pear shaped. So जब contracted होता है, it lies on the floor of the pelvic cavity. When it gets filled with the urine, then it extends into the abdominal cavity. So here you can see this is the urinary system of the horse. This is the right kidney, this is the left kidney, and these are the ureters, and this is the urinary bladder. These are the umbilical arteries, and this is its cranial part, this is the body, and this is the caudal part, that is the neck of urinary bladder. For the description, the urinary bladder, it has three parts. तीन parts होते हैं. cranial part होता है जिसको हम vertex बोलते हैं, and an intermediate that's called as body, and a caudal part जिसको हम neck बोलते हैं. The anterior part of the vertex, it is a blind end and it presents a scar at the middle जिसको हम cicatrix. This cicatrix, it represents the position of the urachus. Urachus जो होता है एक allantoic stalk होता है that connects the fetal urinary bladder with the allantoic sac. तो वो जहाँ पे present होता है उस point को हम cicatrix बोलते हैं. And the middle part of the urinary bladder उसको हम body बोलते हैं. The body, it is rounded and it presents two surfaces. One is the superior या dorsal and inferior या ventral surface. The two surfaces are there, dorsal surface and ventral surface. जो dorsal surface होता है ये ज़्यादा convex होता है as compared to that of ventral surface. Now the caudal end of the urinary bladder, yeah, that is known as the neck. ये narrow होता है, it's narrow and it joins in the urethra, and this neck, it lacks the peritoneum. So here in the diagram you can see this is the urinary bladder. ये इसका cranial end हो गया. ये this is the middle part, that is the body, and this is here the neck, and this is the urethra. Here you can also see this is the vertex, this is the body, and here this is the neck of the urinary bladder, and this is the urethra. Now coming to the relation of the urinary bladder. So the relation, it varies, it depends upon the amount of the urine and it depends upon the sex. The ventral surface of the urinary bladder, it is related to the floor of the pelvis as well as the abdomen, while as the dorsal surface, in case of the males, it is related with the rectum, genital fold, terminal part of vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate. And in case of the female, the dorsal surface is related with the uterus, body of uterus and vagina. So ventral surface in both the sexes, it is related किसके साथ? Floor of the pelvic cavity and abdominal cavity. While जो dorsal surface होता है ये relate होता है in case of the males में rectum, genital fold, terminal part of the vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate में, and females में body of uterus and vagina के साथ relate होता है. There are different ligaments, peritoneal folds that fix the position of the urinary bladder. So these ligaments are known as ligaments of the urinary bladder, which are 3 in number. These are 2 types, but the number is 3. So first one is the ventral or the median or the middle ligament. So it is a triangular fold that extends from the ventral surface of the urinary bladder to the floor of the pelvis and abdomen. In case of the neonates or newly born animals, it's extensive and it extends up to the umbilicus. And here it is called as median umbilical ligament. Now the another is the lateral ligaments. The lateral ligaments are generally they are two in number and they extend on either side of the lateral aspect of the urinary bladder to the lateral wall of the pelvis. So each lateral ligament that contains in its free edge a round cord-like structure that is known as round ligament. These round ligaments, these are actually the fetal remnants of the umbilical artery which arise from the internal iliac artery. Here you can see this is the urinary bladder. These are the lateral ligaments and these are the round ligaments are present at the free edges of the urinary bladder. So these are the round ligaments of urinary bladder. These are the lateral ligaments and this is the urogenital fold that is related with the dorsal surface of the urinary bladder. And these are the vas ampulla of the vas deferens. These are seminal vesicles, prostate, urethra, and these are the Cowper's glands. Now, the posterior part of the bladder, it has no peritoneal covering and it is attached to the surrounding parts by with the help of the fat and connective tissue. It is evident that the posterior part of the urinary bladder has a definite fixed position while as the anterior part it is movable. तो urinary bladder जो होता है उसका जो anterior part होता है वो movable होता है. That's not fixed because when it is contracted it lies on the floor of the pelvis. When it gets filled with the urine it extends into the abdominal cavity. Now coming to the structure of the urinary bladder. जो wall of the urinary bladder उसमें क्या होता है? It has the outer layer that is the peritoneum, then it has a muscular layer and the inner is the mucosa layer. The serous coat that covers the greater part of the dorsal surface from which it is reflected in the male to form genital fold, and in case of the females it passes on to the vagina and form urogenital fold, urogenital pouch. So जो peritoneum covering होती है that is present on the dorsal surface of urinary bladder. In case of the males ये genital fold बनाता है and in case of the females ये vesicogenital pouch बनाता है. And ventrally the peritoneum जो होता है ये cover करता है only the anterior half or the less of the urinary bladder and it gets reflected on the floor of the pelvis. ठीक है. Then comes the next layer जिसको हम muscular layer बोलते हैं and the muscular coat of the urinary bladder जो होती है that's called a detressor muscle. ये unstripped muscle होती है, smooth muscle होती है and it generally consists of 3 layers. 3 layers present होती है इसमें. The outer which is the longitudinal, the middle which is circular and the inner is again longitudinal. The middle layer which is circular it forms a sphincter that is known as sphincter vesicae. The innermost layer that is the mucosa, the mucous membrane here it is lined with the transitional epithelium like that of the ureter. So ureter or urinary bladder में transitional epithelium होता है and the mucosa it forms numerous folds when the urinary bladder is empty. जब urinary bladder empty होता है तो it forms numerous folds but there is a triangular area where these mucosal folds are absent. उसको हम बोलते हैं trigonum vesicae. ठीक है, that's known as trigonum vesicae. Here the mucosal folds are absent. This trigonum vesicae it has got 3 angles. The 2 anterior angles they will represent the opening of the 2 ureters. ठीक है, this is the urinary bladder, this is the outer peritoneum, this is the muscular layer. It has got the outer is longitudinal, then middle, here it is circular, then again it is the longitudinal layer and here this is the mucosa. And this is the triangular area that we called as trigona vesicae. There are the anterior angles of this trigona vesicae that represent the opening of the ureters, and the posterior opening that represent the opening of the urethra, urinary bladder into the urethra, जिसको हम internal urethral orifice भी बोलते हैं. The posterior angle that represents the opening of the urinary bladder into the urethra, that's called as internal urethral orifice. From each urethral opening, fold of mucosa that will extend to the neck of the bladder, where it unites with its fellow to form urethral crust, which is continuous with the urethra. So each urethral opening से क्या होता है, एक म्यूकोसल फोल्ड एक्सटेंड करता है, वो ज्वाइन करता है विद द म्यूकोसल फोल्ड ऑफ द अपोजिट साइड और वो एक क्रस्ट बनाता है, दैट इज नोन एज मीडियन यूरेथ्रल क्रस्ट. दैट यूरेथ्रल क्रस्ट इट कंटिन्यूज with the urethra. Now the blood supply to the urinary bladder, it is given by the important artery, that is urogenital artery and internal pudic artery, and the nerve supply is through hypogastric nerve and pudendal nerve. Now coming to the other species like the horse, the urinary bladder in case of horse, it is short and wide. And very important, it does not extend into the abdominal cavity like that of the ox or the bull. So when it gets filled with the urine, it remains in the pelvic cavity, but does not extend into the abdominal cavity in case of the horse. In case of the dog, when it is empty, it is remain in the pelvic cavity. When it gets filled with the urine, it goes into the abdominal cavity. In case of the pig, the urinary bladder is relatively very large, and when it gets filled with the urine, it goes into the abdominal cavity. In case of the fowl, the urinary bladder is absent, and here in case of the fowl, the ureters, they open in a very important structure that is known as cloaca. Which part of the cloaca? That is urodium. Now coming to the urethra. So urethra is again a very important structure. It is a musculomembranous tube that is present in both male as well as in case of the female animals. In case of the male animals, the urethra, it will carry only the urine, while as in case of the males, it carry both urine as well as the semen. The female urethra, it extends caudally on the floor of the pelvis, ventral to the reproductive tract, and then it passes obliquely through the wall of the vagina and opens ventrally at the junction between the vagina and vestibule. So from the neck of the urinary bladder se extend karta hai and along the floor of the pelvic cavity, then it passes through the wall of the vagina obliquely and then opens at the junction between the vagina and the vestibule ventrally. And that opening, terminal opening, it is called as external urethral orifice. Now in case of the bull, ये जो urethra होता है, it extends from the neck of the urinary bladder कहाँ तक? To the tip of the gland sphincter. This urethra, it passes backwards on the floor of the pelvis, and when it reaches to the ischial arch, it makes a sharp bend and then gets incorporated into the body of the penis. Here in case of the bull urethra, now it has got two parts. The part that lies in the pelvic cavity, that is called as pelvic urethra, and the part which gets incorporated in the penis, that is known as penile part. So here you can see this is the urinary bladder, this is the urethra. So this is the pelvic urethra, and from here up to the glans, this is the penile urethra. So here at the level of the ischial arch, it takes a sharp turn and gets incorporated into the body of the penis. Here in the diagram, you can also see this is the urinary bladder. These are the vast differences: the seminal vesicle, This is the prostate and this is the urethra, and this muscle is known as urethralis. So now coming to the first part, that is the pelvic part. The pelvic part, it extends from the urinary bladder up to the ischial artery. And this urethra, it is the most dilatable and the widest part of the urethra. The pelvic urethra, it is covered by a compressor muscle that is called as urethralis muscle. So also called as Wilson's muscle. While as the penile part जो होता है वो कहाँ से extend करेगा? From the ischial arc से लेकर up to the glans penis तक. The penile part of the urethra, it is covered by an erectile tissue that is called as corpus spongiosum and a muscle that is known as bulbus spongiosus. And at the beginning, this penile part of the urethra, it will form an enlargement जिसको हम बोलते हैं bulbous urethra. Here in the diagram, you can also see this is the pelvic part of the urethra and this is the penile part of the urethra. Here, this is urinary bladder, this is pelvic urethra, this is the penile urethra. So in the urethra, there are two openings. The opening via the urinary bladder that opens into the urethra, it is called as internal urethral orifice. This orifice remains always closed except during the urination or micturition. While as the terminal opening of the urethra, it is called as external urethral orifice. Now, in case of the buck and the ram, there is a very important structure that the urethra, it will project about 1.5 inches beyond the glans penis and it forms a twisted process that is called as processus urethrae. So this is the processus urethrae, buck as well as in the ram. Here you can also see this is the processus urethrae and this is the glans penis galia glandis. This is the processus urethrae in case of the buck as ram. So now coming the very important term that's called as suburethral diverticulum hota kya hai? In case of the cow and sow, there is a diverticulum or a blind pouch that is present ventral to the external urethral orifice. So this is the vagina, this is the vestibule. इनके बीच में जो junction होता है, there is opening of the external urethral orifice here. Just ventral to the external urethral orifice, there is a diverticulum ऐसे एक नीचे से ऐसे diverticulum होता है. This is called as suburethral diverticulum, and this is present only in the cow and sow. Thank you.